Hello and a warm welcome to Federal Special Program Capital Beat. India is considering returning to buying Russian crude amassed in floating storage in Asia as the war in Iran and Tehran's retaliatory strikes in the region have severely disrupted oil flows from the Middle East. Now, there's a report in Bloomberg which clearly says that the state held refiners of India, which is the world's third largest oil importer, the Indian government officials met over the weekend to discuss emergency supply plans following the major escalation in the Middle East. Now, these plans include a potential return of the Indian refiners purchasing Russian oil, and this is what the sources in the Bloomberg have quoted. Now, considering the massive disruption to flows in the vital Strait of Hormuz, Indian Oil Ministry officials are pushing the Foreign Affairs Ministry to pursue a leeway from the United States for imports of Russian oil, millions of barrels of which are sitting idled near major hubs in Asia. This is what the Bloomberg reports. Now, India's current commercial and strategic crude reserves could be sufficient to cover only 2 weeks of consumption. This is what the sources are saying. So, how big is oil crisis in the wake of Iran and Israel war? Can India really return to buying Russian oil? Now, I would like to show you a tweet from a strategic expert, Brahmachalani, what he says, and I'd like to play that out because some very important points have come out in this tweet. He says that India is paying the price for the Trump-Netanyahu war. Now, I'm going to read this out, just listen to it carefully, and then we head straight into the discussion. India's economic growth and energy security are now exposed to the volatile front lines of the Middle East conflict. By slashing imports of the discounted Russian oil to their lowest level since March 2022 and ramping up purchases of high-priced Middle Eastern and US crude, India has made itself acutely vulnerable to rising oil prices and to disruptions of tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz in the wake of Trump-Netanyahu war on Iran. Roughly, now this is a very important data in the second paragraph of his tweet, that's very important. Roughly 50% of India's oil imports and 60% of its LNG purchases now pass through Hormuz. The vulnerability is even more pronounced for cooking gas, that is LPG. Nearly 80 to 85% of India's LPG is sourced from the Gulf and must transit the Strait. Unlike crude, India maintains no strategic reserves of LPG, meaning any disruption would quickly hit households directly. So this is what Brahmachalani has said. And then if I come to the second page of his tweet, in effect, the Trump-Netanyahu war has turned the Strait of Hormuz into a massive single point of failure for India. By aligning more closely with the US-Israel axis against Iran, India has traded a price risk, in brackets, that is loss of Russian discounts, for supply risk, that is deepened dependence on Hormuz. The economic consequences of Modi's costly bet are significant. Every $10 increase in oil prices adds roughly to $13 to $14 billion to India's annual import bill, putting upward pressure on inflation and widening its overall trade deficit. Simply put, India will pay a steep price for the war, even as Trump calls Modi a very close friend and Netanyahu describes him as a brother. Under pressure from the Trump administration, India agreed to curb Russian purchases in exchange for relief from punitive US tariffs, which had reached as high as 50%. So it's a long tweet put out by Brahmachalani. Now look at this. China, by contrast, he's given a strong contrast between China and India. China, by contrast, can mitigate the Hormuz risk by simply stepping up purchases of Russian oil and gas via overland routes. In effect, India's decision to curb Russian imports has handed its principal adversary an advantage. Beijing can absorb additional Russian supplies at a critical juncture, insulating itself from Gulf disruptions, while New Delhi becomes more exposed to them. Now, we'll head straight into the discussion. Joining me this evening is Narendra Taneja, someone who is an expert on oil and energy. Thank you so much, Mr. Taneja, for joining. We have Dr. Shubhda Chaudhary, who's an expert on the Middle East. Thank you so much for joining. We have Pushpraj Deshpande, who's the author and policy expert and also follows the diplomacy and is also part of the Foreign Affairs Department of the Congress. And we have Sanjay Kapoor, a senior journalist and international affairs expert. Thank you so much to you all for joining. And I'll begin with Mr. Narendra Taneja. Mr. Taneja, I would like to understand from you that in the wake of this Iran and Israel war, how serious is the oil crisis for India? Not only oil, it now pervades to the gas crisis as well. What happens to the LPG when 80 to 85% of the LPG is transferred through the Strait of Hormuz? So, which means that is it going to ultimately affect the Indian households?
Well, yes, I saw that tweet that you were quoting. I mean, it shows ignorance about how the global oil system functions, economy functions. Number one, you see, we haven't stopped importing oil from Russia. Who said it? Reduced, yes. Stopped, no. We are buying. We have invested $18 billion in Russian oil and gas assets. We own oil wells there. We own oil fields there, including Sakhalin 1, which is a flagship field. And we are entitled to bring that oil or gas to India, which we do. Secondly, saying that China has done well because China can, if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, China can bring oil via land route. It shows complete ignorance. That's not how it works. Oil is not Coca-Cola that you put in a bottle and bring it like that. Where is the infrastructure? 70% of oil that China buys come by sea because that is the best route. The other route is to build a pipeline. There is a pipeline. It has a capacity. It can't bring the entire thing that China needs. That's not how it works. How do you bring that? Can you build a pipeline overnight? It takes 10 years. So that shows the ignorance. LPG, what is LPG? Where do you produce LPG? In a refinery. And at the time when you're producing oil. That's how it works. So the question is that, when you are, as long as you're able to bring crude oil into Indian refineries, that's where we produce LPG. And we also buy it from overseas because demand is so high in the country because we have taken LPG to every household. That's why. Third thing is that, third, which is important, that, overall is so far, I wouldn't really call it crisis, huge challenges at this stage. If the war goes on, let's say beyond 13 days, then we probably will enter into the crisis mode. Because Strait of Hormuz, as we talk, is not closed. It has not been mined. It has never been closed in history. And as of we talk today, the traffic has come down because what the Revolutionary Guards are saying, they are sending a radio signal to every single tanker in the area saying that if you try to cross, we will hit you. So that's why many tankers, especially the big tankers like ULCCs or VLCC, very large crude, they're taking care because insurance companies are calling them, say, hey, we won't cover it if you do, so just wait. And at the same time, tankers which is the southern part of Strait of Hormuz, which have to go to Saudi Arabia and all that to collect the cargo, that is crude oil, they're also waiting. Don't forget, the Strait of Hormuz does not belong to Iran only. Half of it is actually territory that belongs to Oman. So that's why Oman is trying his level best.
Taneja, the experts have been pointing out the fact that there are attacks on oil tankers as well in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is capable of, laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. All this is being talked about. So, which means, and this brings me to the question that is the oil crisis really, really serious for India? And I'm concerned more about India. Then what is the fallout on India?
No, you are concerned about India, but oil is a global commodity. We can't talk, when we talk of oil, we talk of the whole world. It's a globally benchmark commodity. You see, if the world is hit, we are hit. If India is hit, the world is hit. That's how it functions, the global. We import 89% of our total requirement of oil. 89%. We import 5 million barrels of oil every day. We consume 5.7 million barrels every day. We're the third largest consumer and the second largest importer of oil on the planet. So India is today, when you look at the demand for oil, is being driven by India. Incremental growth is coming all from India. So very, very important player. So now, but here the point is the tanker you're referring to, it was not in the Strait of Hormuz. It was south of Strait of Hormuz. That's where it was hit. And secondly, the thing is that if Iran, let's say, tries to mine that area, the only way, how can you do it? Because it's like 30 kilometers. At the choke point. So the only way is that you mine it. And Iran has made no attempt. In fact, day before yesterday, Iran's foreign minister said, we have no such plans. It's only the Revolutionary Guards, some batteries of Revolutionary Guard, they are the one who are saying that we are going to, hit you if you try to do that. So these are the facts on the ground just 25 minutes ago. 25 minutes ago. And
Right.
therefore we have to, but what is happening is the traffic has actually, now come down to hardly 2 or 3%. That's the challenge. Tankers are not able to move because they don't want to take risks, because insurance companies are saying, look, don't do that. So that's
Right.
what is its status as of today.
So, Mr. Taneja, so this Bloomberg report, which says that India is going to return to buying Russian oil, because there were reports that the purchases had come down drastically. I'm not saying that we had stopped completely, but the purchases had come down drastically. So, are we going to return to the original level of purchase, Mr. Taneja?
Well, why shouldn't we go back? You see, we buy oil from 40 different
No,
countries.
because
40,
we had committed to Trump. You asked me a question, why? Because we had committed to Trump that we will
no
bring
such.
down the purchases.
To the best of my knowledge, there is no. How can we commit? We have
Oh,
18
that's
billion
part of
dollars.
the executive order, sir. That was part of the executive American order.
They can say, show me where the government of India said that we will stop buying oil from Russia. Where is that? We no such commitment from India. The
No,
only
but there
thing
were
is,
statements, sir. There were statements from Reliance and oil refiners. They on record they've said that they brought down the purchases.
brought down is different thing. You see, the thing is that don't forget one thing: the history. Until Ukraine war, we were not buying much oil from Russia. You know the reasons? Number one, price. Number two, it takes for a ship 26 days to bring oil from Russia to India. 26 days. When we buy from Saudi Arabia, it takes 4 days and 6 hours. That's it. It's the economics. When you're taking longer time, you're paying more for the tanker, you're paying more for the insurance, and the overall economics goes up. And the last time when we were buying oil from Russia, the discount from $20 per barrel, the discounts have come down to just $4.5 per barrel. So
Right.
it's all economics at the same time. If we see only politics in it, we'll reach to the wrong conclusion. And the again thing is, America has sanctioned two companies. Companies are Lukoil and Rosneft. Rosneft is a Sarkari company, government company. Lukoil is they have sanctioned these two companies. You can't buy from them, but you can buy from other companies. If they sell to entity X, we can buy from entity X. So that's how it functions. If now in such a situation, we just go back and buy as much oil as possible from Russia if they continue to offer attractive prices.
All right, all right. So I'll come to Dr. Shubhda Chaudhary. Dr. Chaudhary, how serious is the oil crisis and this Bloomberg story which says that India is going to return back to Russia? Now, will Russia allow this? How will America react? All those are questions. How can we forget the executive order which came out where it said that India is committed not to buy oil from Russia? Then, of course, the US verdict on the tariffs came and everything just threw in a tizzy. But how do you see the situation evolving now in terms of the fallout on India?
Look, the first thing is that what are the companies that are, having some kind of vulnerability when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz? Strait of Hormuz is not closed for the Russian and Chinese ships as of now. It's not closed. The point is, first is BLS International Service, which takes 40% of revenue, KRBL Limited 36%, Larsen and Turbo 35%, VA Tech Wabag 16%, Maruti Suzuki 12.5%, Kalyan Jewelers 12%, Kalpataru Projects 11%, L&T Foods 8%, Titan Company 8%, Ashok Leyland 7%. Our entire, because we also export, it's not just about import. We also export. Our entire export architecture, if you look at it very carefully, is around the entire Iran and Central Asia, Eurasian market, which we are very, very vulnerable of. Right now, the statistic says that we have to be very careful. Why? Look, the politics is that we do not know what was the exact trade deal between India and US. We know that the 50% tariff that Trump imposed on India is illegal under IEEPA that was ruled by the Supreme Court of US, and an Indian American, Neil Katyal, played a pivotal role in actually fighting against those tariffs. The next thing is that the trade team that had to go from India to US did not go. What we know is that as soon as the Prime Minister goes to Israel, Howard Lutnick comes to India. What was the discussion on that? We don't know. So there are a lot of variables we do not know. The political variables we do not know. As far as the Russian angle is concerned, see, this is a fight between two global world orders. On one side, you have Western Europe, US, and Israel, and on the other side, you have China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia. Obviously, Russia is going to be very happy if, in case India returns on the full intake of whatever, I do agree with our co-panelists that the ghost fleets were already working. And it's not that, that if it takes 24 days from Russia to India for importing of oil, there's just one ship. There are many hundreds of ghost fleets that work. So the point is that we do not know. There are a lot of variables, but the point that we have to be very careful of: A, India's entire export architecture is around Chabahar. Our budget has not allocated any, monetary price for Chabahar in this year. The 120 million we have given to the Iranian government. But the point is that the other port, which is Bandar Abbas, was also very important for India when it comes to the entire Eurasian trade. Now, Bandar Abbas is also, there's a history. There's one reason, there's one theory that why Iran is being attacked. It is because DP World, which was attacked by Iran, IRGC 2 days back, was interested in investing in two ports. One was Port of Tartus in Syria, and the other was Bandar Abbas in Iran. Now, when Qasem Soleimani did not agree with that, he was killed. There are few theories that Trump even didn't know that the assassination attempt at Qasem Soleimani had been ordered in 2020. The other was Port of Tartus. And now you can see the entire chronology of how the entire structure, be it of, Al-Qaeda, Jabhat al-Nusra, HTS, and now the presidency of Syria under Ahmad al-Shara, has become like a stooge or a puppet regime. I won't call it a Trojan horse because I'm a bit speculative about it, but it has become a stooge for the US and Israeli interest. In 2003, when US invaded Iraq, it was an illegal invasion. Who made the most profit of the gas from Iraq? It was Israel. Right now, there are also theories that Howard Lutnick has invested in the insurance policy of Burj Khalifa in January 2026. How is that possible? If they didn't know, how is that possible? The next thing is that how we also have to look at our diaspora. We have almost 35 lakh Indians in UAE, 25 lakh Indians in Saudi Arabia. Kuwait, why is Kuwait being targeted in a haphazard manner? And there's a lot of, incident of friendly fire, though I don't agree that you can have friendly fire 3 times. But the idea is that it has the most complicated version of the American bases of Navy and Air Force in Kuwait. The next thing is we have more than 3.3 lakh in Bahrain. We have then 10 lakhs in Kuwait. We have 4 to 5 lakhs in Oman. So we have a huge diaspora, which is a red line. We cannot evacuate the diaspora. We also have diaspora in Iran. We also have diaspora in Israel. The Indians and the Chinese workers are not getting shelters in Israel as we speak. Yesterday, a video went viral where an Israeli general is saying that we are going to sell our Iron Dome and Iron Beam. And the anchor asks him that how can we sell it? We don't have a production line. And the general shamelessly says we have 1.4 billions buying it. This comes at the same time when, Beirut is being carpet bombed, when south of Lebanon is being carpet bombed, when 9 hospitals in Iran
Yeah.
are bombed.
Right, but I don't want to get into so many technicalities. But the point is that if you look at things from India's perspective, do you think that if India returns to buying oil from Russia, would Russia readily agree to this? How will America respond to it? And whatever crisis India is facing, or as Mr. Taneja says, it's not a crisis; it's a challenge which we have to deal with. So will India be sitting in a comfortable position if it returns back to the original level of our purchases with Russia?
So look at the theory. One is that why was Maduro kidnapped illegally? To have retention of the Venezuelan oil, which will not, the entire chaos in the Middle Eastern oil structure will then not have impact on the US, which already produces shale oil. And it's not just Trump; it's the Ministry of Defense or War, whatever they call it, which is also involved in fracking. So of the shale oil. So they have Venezuela and they have cornered it. Now the point is that is India in a comfortable position? The answer is no. We are not in a comfortable position because we have to ensure there are a couple of things that we have to ensure. The first is that the immediate priority should be to activate the international north-south corridor eastern route via Bandar Abbas, because we also export pharmaceuticals and other engineering products to Russia and Central Asia. We also need to have diplomatic immunity, if we can, on the Chabahar port with any successor government that comes in Tehran. The short term plan also is to scale up the Chennai Vladivostok Maritime Corridor, which is called as CVMC, for Russia bound trade. The Iran independent route reduces the transit time from 40 to 24 days, which is 40% faster than the Suez Canal. And it is already facilitating crude, LNG, fertilizers, coal, and manufactured goods. It also strengthens India's Russia trade while ensuring shipments from sanction risks which are tied to Iran. We also have to operationalize the Ashgabat Agreement Corridor, which was acceded in 2018 as a structured Iran bypass route via Turkmenistan and the Caspian Sea. Now, in March 2025, India shipped a cargo consignment from Mundra port in Gujarat to Kazakhstan via the eastern route of INSTC, traveling from Bandar Abbas to Central Asia. This was the first test which was done of the commercial viability of this route. Critically, this does not include the Chabahar port, but it uses Bandar Abbas. Bypassing the Iranian internal chaos that is happening right now. So, Bandar Abbas itself is under another choke point because it handles 85% of Iran's seaborne trade and is highly congested as we speak right now. So, India is over reliant on Iran because it can be also a single point of failure. It can be. Now, Chabahar has to be retained as a strategic foothold. It's not just about Chabahar is not just about Iran. It's all about our entry into the Central Asia and Eurasia. Now, when it comes to answering your question about Russia, I think there was a few of the Russian diplomats and a lot of Russian businessmen. There were two kinds of passageways that were happening in India for the past 6 months. One was a lot of American Republicans were visiting India, a lot of them, and having backdoor channel diplomacy with Indian think tanks. The other was a lot of Russian businessmen were also coming to India before Putin's visit. And most of them were not happy with India's position. They were not happy. And this is something which I have been told. Now, Russia does not want to lose India as a strategic partner. So going back to
You're saying
Russia,
that they will gladly welcome India. So you're saying that Russia will gladly welcome India if it returns to the original level of purchase.
it's economics, yes. It's profit for Russia. It's not politics, it's economics, as
And,
our two
and you're
panelists
saying
said.
America won't object? You're saying America won't object?
See, what America is going to do, what exit strategy they have, what objective they have, I have no idea. Yesterday, Pete Hegseth, when he was addressing the entire press conference in which he started scolding the journalist and even the Kurdish journalist and everyone who was around, and thankfully he was conscious because otherwise he's a hardcore alcoholic. But the point is they don't have an exit strategy. Immediately, there was a photo that went viral that Donald Trump is scolding Pete Hegseth. Then Donald Trump had a press conference because he was evading the question of Iran, because he was during the weekend at Mar-a-Lago and there was a fracture within the Trump administration. On one hand, you had Marco Rubio and Trump ordering the strikes on Iran. On the other hand, you had Tulsi Gabbard and J.D. Vance in the White House. And Tulsi Gabbard had come openly criticizing the entire initiative. And she had always been a DNI, which is do not invite in these discussions.
Okay.
So the question is, no one knows what Trump is going to do. The sanctions which were put or tariffs which were put were illegal.
In a way, you're saying that we do not know how Trump is going to react to this if India returns back to the Russian oil. Now, coming to the strategic and the diplomatic stand which India is taking. Coming to you, Pushpraj, how do you see this India's return to buying Russian oil? Because at that point of time, everyone was discussing, even opposition was saying that, look, we are looking like a weak country. We are not able to raise our voice against Donald Trump because Russia is our long-standing partner. We've almost abandoned Russia. Now we are going back to buying Russian oil. So is it some kind of a going back on what the original stand was during when the trade talks were on?
Niluji, very good evening to you, the panelists, and our viewers. See, let's be very clear about a couple of things. India has always walked a tightrope when it comes to foreign policy. And this is partly because we have remained assiduously non-aligned in letter and spirit. Now, this doesn't mean being neutral, it means maximizing our strategic self-interest while taking a stand as and when it is possible. Now, in this particular context, we, as a responsible opposition, had told the government that we need to continue purchasing oil from Russia because it pertains to our energy security. As the previous panelist said, we have not entirely stopped purchasing oil, although we have reduced from 36% of our total oil imports in the last quarter of 25 to I think about 9% in Jan 26. So in a sense, we have not entirely stopped. So there is some truth to the fact that there is no binding commitment from the government of India to completely stop buying Russian oil. Although anecdotally and allegedly, the reciprocal tariffs on India, 25%, were reduced because there was a commitment. Although there is nothing in our press readout, at least from our end, although President Trump has claimed that. So in a sense, it would be good for us to now diversify our oil imports, especially given the tensions and challenges that are now going to arise in West Asia. I personally feel that this is the second or third time that the government of India has buckled. We stopped imports from first Venezuela, then Iran in 2019, and then reduced oil imports from Russia more recently. So it has sort of, the government of India has in some sense compromised our energy security needs. That is one part of it. The second part of it is this speaks to a larger structural problem that has arisen in the last few years. I can only speculate as to why the government of India is doing this. But the fact of the matter is that given the global disruptions and the reassertion of primordial rules of statecraft, it was very important for us to remain non-aligned, maximize our self-interest, not just with regard to energy security, but also many other aspects. This government is constitutionally obligated, as you know, Article 51 of our constitution morally obligates the government to adhere to international treaties and conventions. So given that, we should have taken a firm stance against the unilateral attack on one nation, and of course attempts to destabilize the elected leader of a government. And we need to do this not just because of because of it's a moral question. It's also a strategic question. As you know, that we continue to maintain that Pakistan has occupied parts of Kashmir. So given that, any perceived sanction of actions that undermine the sovereignty of another nation undermines our position on POK. So the point I'm trying to make is to preserve moral autonomy and strategic credibility, we must uniformly and without exception apply those principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity. The reason I'm pointing out these two disparate points is one is with regard to energy security, us buckling under two times previously and now to reduce it. Although there are reports that the discounts that were coming from Russian oil were already reducing, so it would have anyway made sense commercially to diversify imports. But there is a perceptive sense that we have been buckling under American pressure on this particular issue, and now clearly that the government has not taken a firm stand on this attack, this unilateral attack, without any kind of congressional sanction from the United States or the UNSC sanction, and in fact in violation of at least two articles of the United Nations Charter, the UN Charter, Article 2.4 and I think 2.3. So my point is that these two speak to a larger buckling of our our strategic autonomy and outsourcing, in a sense, our independent foreign policy. You know, Prime Minister Nehru, in his speech in Parliament, I think on March 8th, I think, 1948, in the Constituent Assembly, it was a demand for grants on external affairs. He said that, see, if any nation compromises its independent foreign policy, you no longer remain independent. And as you know, Niluji, this is going to have serious consequences on India, not just with regard to gas. The previous panelist, Dr. Shubh Chaudhary, said, she mentioned the diaspora Indians, 9 million diaspora Indians. They account for 38% of total remittances. There's going to be a massive problem in Kerala, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand, where these remittances come to. And any stress labor market there is going to hit diaspora Indians and their remittances, which will further compress consumption expenditure in India, which is already at a 50-year low in India. Then, of course, she also mentioned the export of our goods. I mean, West Asia purchases about 15% of India's merchandise exports. That is going to get hit, right? So, any kind of, as previous panelists said, Mr. Taneja, that beyond 13 days, this is going to, if it prolongs, any prolonged blockade, would
Right.
widen our current account deficit, and it is going to ignite inflation in India in a major way. Because, see,
Right.
oil volatility will invariably result in domestic economic volatility. There's no two ways about it.
Okay, so let me just get one concluding comment from Mr. Taneja because he has to leave for some show. Mr. Taneja, your concluding thoughts, and then I'll go to Sanjay also, who couldn't speak because he got disrupted. Yes, Mr. Taneja.
No, you see, I have a limited point to make. I don't want to get into the political part and all that. I mean, I'm not a political spokesperson in this show. The point here is that, when you look at the global situation right now, especially in the context of energy economics and energy security, countries like India, countries like Japan, South Korea are more vulnerable, let's say, than the United States, because United States is the biggest producer of oil in the world, and they're also the biggest consumer. And the United States consumer is used to cheap oil. That's why they went into Iraq. That's why they went into Libya. We all know the history: Gulf War One, Gulf War Two. Their chemical weapons and so on and so forth. But we all know why they were there. They were there for oil. And so therefore, the way I'm looking at it is that if the war goes on for more than 13 days, then we are entering into a very, very difficult phase in terms of the energy economics, be it LPG, LNG, oil, and even to some extent coal and even gold. You see, gold is not energy, but even gold will be affected. Now, the question is, can American consumer accept it? You see, if it goes on for more than 13 days, the biggest, victim, if I may use the word victim, is going to be American consumer. They will hate their president for that. They used to cheap oil. As long as you can bring cheap oil from wherever, Iran or Venezuela, they're fine. And that's why they went into Venezuela. They went there for oil, nothing else. And even Iran, read it very carefully. Somewhere it is about oil. Because of Iran, tomorrow there is a regime which is kind of willing to go a different direction. That means the Iranian oil will be available to the global supply system. Right now they produce 4 million barrels of oil. It will go up to 8 million barrels. They have huge reserves. And Western countries will move in, and that oil will basically, the consumers are going to be all over, and all the big importers are going to be the beneficiary, but first and foremost the Americans, because they're the one who consume the maximum oil. When the prices go down, thanks to the Iranian oil in the global supply system, wonderful. So I think if it goes on for more than 11 days, then you are entering into then you are moving basically into the crisis zone for the entire world, including the US, India, Japan, everybody. Now, is that the kind of geopolitical math of President Trump? I don't think so. My sense, which is based on some kind of analysis, which I share with people who know Washington, D.C. better than me, that the geopolitical math is very simple. Take it to 11 days, not beyond it. Because in the meantime, do your best, use whatever power you have in order to destroy or damage Iranian economy on the ground. Out of 500 towns, they have targeted 365 towns. These are not military targets. Why are you doing that? To engineer, to trigger a kind of chain of events which will lead to regime change. That's my analysis. So which means I see within next 9 days, kind of guns may fall silent, and then you will see a different kind of voices coming out of Tehran. At this stage, we don't know. And then you will see that all these crises will basically move from the headline to sub-headline on the top of in the front line page of the newspaper. So I'm not too worried at this stage, but at the same time, if Iran decides to really go for a different kind of retaliation in terms of moving into a neighboring country, let's say Kuwait, moving them, moving
Right.
army to Kuwait. Then we are talking real crisis. That's what worries me. I'm going to
Hmm.
wait and see how things go. But so far, this is the challenges. But if it goes beyond 9 days from today, then we are getting into crisis zone. But if Iran moves its army into the neighboring country, we are talking a very, very difficult geopolitical energy
Right.
landscape. Thank
No,
you.
I think that's very well put by you, Mr. Taneja, and I think you have to leave, so I'll let you go. Thank you very much for joining, and I'll come to Sanjay now. Sanjay, like Mr. Taneja was saying, that if we see the war extending beyond 9 days, then the real crisis begins. I was just listening to Douglas McGregor, who's the combat war veteran and also the secretary to the US Defense Secretary. And he, in an interview to an American YouTuber, has very clearly said that America is losing out in terms of strategy. America doesn't have a plan. They've just jumped into the war. Do we see Iran really winning this round of combat operations?
I am not very sure whether Iran can really win the combat operation. I mean, I may sound a bit out of sync with the rest of the crowd, but the fact of the matter is that they try to show, the United States and their allies try to show that the enemy is far stronger than what it is, so that they can justify to their own people, to the parliament or whomsoever, that they had put up a big show, that they were able to suppress somebody who was evil. How the kind of vocabulary they use in trying to describe Ayatollah Khomeini, Khamenei, and others is really horrendous. For everybody that they can think of who's opposed to them is evil. But the fact of the matter, they are worse than evil. They are far beyond. I mean, you don't have language to describe how evil they can be. But the fact is that the United States of America has done far greater harm at the moment in whatever they're doing, and I don't agree entirely with Mr. Taneja. He's not here though, and I should not speak unkindly to whatever he said. He shies away from politics, but it's all politics which is played out here, and in a certain way, we need to be cognizant of that. And I think that India is going to get hurt, but India seemed to be prepared when they decided to move their entire lot with the Venezuelan oil. They decided to go away from the Russian oil, so they may buy at the moment at the because they already buying about a uh, billion barrels per day. Now they can buy another 50,000 or a lakh, whatever, howsoever, to justify that. But I don't think it will cause any kind of anxiety with Mr. Trump, because eventually India is moving away, and that is what Russia is going to be cognizant of, and this is what the Americans want at the moment. So that is how it is playing out.
Sanjay, one last question before I wind up the show. That do you think that if the crisis prolongs, and if the Indians really return to buying the original level of their purchases as far as the oil is concerned, do you think India will be able to make up for the shortfalls?
I mean, if they go back to buying oil, Russian oil, which seems to be very unlikely, they may do it for a short term, but it's unlikely to happen in the long term, because you look at how Mr. Modi has been going. He's making all kinds of friendly noises towards the Arab world, towards the US, towards Israel, talking nothing at all about Iran or whatever tragedy that's unfolding, how they've been badgered. But the fact is that they have been forgotten entirely, and Mr. Modi has been pursuing that kind of politics. So I don't think India is going to be worse off because they have chosen their new allies. They will go up to the Americans, they will to prostrate in front of them, and hope that their salvation would lie there.
Right. All right. So we'll have to wait and watch, because that's the biggest story developing across the world. And we'll have to look at every angle, every development, what's happening there as far as this Iran Israel war is concerned. Thank you so much, Sanjay Kapoor, Dr. Shubhda Chaudhary, Pushpraj. Thank you so much for joining.
Bye bye. Thanks for your patience.